Hi. Can we talk about alcoholism? Like, really talk about it without shame, stigma, or judgment? Hi, everybody. I'm excited and, quite frankly, a little terrified to welcome you all to the first episode of The Wandering Wanderer. I hope with this channel, with your support, to do two things. The first is to have candid and honest conversations about alcoholism and sobriety. I want us to explore definitions and terms, its effects on society, the different aspects of society. I will share my personal story of sobriety with you and addiction, as well as incredible stories from others who've chosen a path of sobriety or who've battled the demon that is alcoholism. The other topic I hope to touch on is travel. Now, we all dream of traveling, and I have been very blessed and privileged to have been able to travel a little bit. And I hope to share with you some tidbits of travel here and there, especially when you're traveling across the beautiful yet very complicated African continent. I'm your host, Wendy, and I ask you to come with me as we wonder into the basics of what alcoholism and sobriety are, and how these two sides of the same coin tend to affect each and every one of us in society. If you think about it, let's have a scenario here, right? You're a parent, your child has just turned 18 years old, and you walk into the house and you say, "Hey, I'm gonna take you out. Let's go out and you can test your first ball of cocaine." Sounds crazy, right? No, you wouldn't do that. No sin-minded parent would do that. Yet we do it with alcohol. When our children turn 18, a lot of the rites of passages that they have to go through involve alcohol, right? Another thing I want you to think about your circle. Think about everyone you know, your workplace, your church, your social circle, your home. All of us know at least one person who has a problematic relationship with alcohol, to say the least, right? And this is what makes alcoholism so insidious in our society. It's because we all know that one person, right? We all know that person who drinks a tad too much. And let's just say, if you don't know that one person, that one person may be you. But hey, I'm half joking with that. But alcoholism is one of the most accepted forms of addiction, which is sad. And the primary reason why it's so part of our society is because alcohol is legal. It's accepted in almost every culture, every society. But I think its consequences are just considered a little less insidious than addiction to substances like cocaine and heroin and meth, whose effects are almost immediately seen. People who drink alcohol or who have alcohol addictions can perform in so many other areas, while people who are addicted to these other substances do not. That doesn't mean it effects are not there. The effects are very much there. It's only that you don't see them immediately, because you can drink alcohol to a stupor and the next morning you wake up and you're operating fine. You shoot up coke, or you shoot up meth, or you shoot up any of these other substances, you probably can't function well for a couple of days, right? And the withdrawal is almost immediate. Alcohol doesn't function like that. Alcohol works over time. Alcohol is the only drug I know, and correct me if I'm wrong, y'all. Come to the comments and tell me what you think. But alcohol is the only drug that we shame people into partaking. Because when you go to a social event and there's champagne and there's beer and there's wine and there's all of these fancy drinks, and somebody offers you something and say, "Oh, no, I don't drink." "Oh, one beer is not going to hurt you." "Oh, come on. Are you okay? Are you like some religious nut or something? Are you on medication?" Like, those are the questions we ask people who tell us they don't drink. It's the one substance that, as much as we know affects people and causes severe, harmful physical, psychological, social effects, we still continue to encourage people to partake. And we, as a society, are a hindrance to people who actually realize at some point, "Hey, I have a problem." Because as much as we encourage you to partake in all of it, when you start thinking you might have a problem, or when we can see you have a problem, we ridicule you. we give you all the reasons why you're such a failure because you're a drunk. But sort of got started on that path because everybody else encouraged you to do it. Now, there's a lot of reasons why people drink. There's a lot of justifications for why people drink. But it is so widely accepted that we don't realize how deeply entrenched in our society it is. Now, at this point of this episode, I should probably give you my credentials. I should probably tell you that I am an expert and I have been educated in all of these things and I hold diplomas and degrees and yeah, no. I have one thing that makes me an expert. And that one thing is that I am 4.5 years into sobriety after over 20 years of alcoholism and addiction. I think that makes me somewhat or a little bit of an expert on the experience. So let me, at this point, reintroduce myself. Hi, I'm Wendy, and I'm an alcoholic. Now, before the judgments begin, before you make all the assumptions about what you think you know about alcoholism and the alcoholics, me being an alcoholic and being on the journey of sobriety is only a part of my story, right? I am also a daughter. I am a sister. I am an aunt. I am a friend. I am a niece. I am so many things to so many people around me who allow me to be part of their lives. I'm also an award-winning administrator. I am a magician with logistics, and I am a student. I am still learning so much. I'm also a blogger, an author, and now, voila, a YouTuber, right? All of these are also me. All of these are also part of my stories. All of these are the different facets that make Wendy Wendy. And I think this is what gets lost when we get to the point of addiction, when people become drunks and we write them off because they're just the neighborhood drunk. We forget that they're people. We forget that they're mothers and fathers, that they're brothers and sisters, that they're colleagues, that they're members of our churches and our communities, and that given a chance, they can go back, they can be redeemed, as we all can, right? But starting this channel is something that has sat on my heart for a really long time because we talk about alcoholism in hushed whispers, if we talk about it at all, especially in our African societies. It's like one extreme to the next. It's like we encourage people to drink because we have everything surrounding alcohol. And then when people get addicted and they start the inevitable consequences of them imbibing huge amounts of alcohol, we stigmatize them. We shame them. We make them feel terrible. We write them off. We refuse to give them jobs. We treat them like pariahs. But we contributed in every facet to them becoming the way they are, for them to get down that path. And I think the reason I'm here is I want us to start talking about this. I want us to have honest conversations about our role as a society in creating addiction, in creating addicts, and in creating systems that stigmatize and shame people whose identity is not just alcoholics, but human beings and people who need our love and support. Another reason I want us to talk about alcoholism is because alcohol affects so many facets of our life, from our health, mental, physical, psychological, to our sex lives. We know performance increases or decreases based on alcoholism. It affects our brain and how our brain is formed. It affects our critical thinking and decision making. It affects all of our relationships. And it affects almost every part of who we are. And I hope that we will explore them in the coming episodes. But when you think about it, like when you really sit down and think about it, alcohol determines who we are in a lot of our societies. It determines how we're treated in a lot of societies. It determines who we hang out with. There are people who will not hang out with you and they'll make you feel awkward if you drink. If you don't drink, then they don't want to hang out with you because you're no fun, right? Because alcohol makes you more fun Listen, there's a lot to be unpacked in that one statement. But we also, as we do all of these things, we overlook the damage that alcohol does until it is almost too late for anyone to actually address it. We don't deal with it until people get sick, livers start failing, and all of these become issues, and then it becomes a problem that nobody wants to deal with. So let's start with the basics. What is alcoholism? What is addiction? Addiction generally is such a wider term, and I want to focus primarily on alcoholism because that's what I have experience with, and that's where my passion to talk about this comes from. And on the flip side, we're also going to define what sobriety is. So, what is alcoholism and what is sobriety? Alcoholism is known by a very technical term now. It's called alcohol use. I'm sorry. It's called alcohol use disorder. Yeah, I got that right. Alcohol use disorder is the technical term for it. It's a medical term for it, and it's defined as a chronic and relapsing condition characterized by compulsive and problematic alcohol use, despite negative consequences to one's health, relationships, and responsibilities. When drinking becomes more of a priority in your life over other things, Houston, we've got a problem. And so remember these words. Again, I think it's important that I say this. I'm not against alcohol. I don't think everybody should it's this really, really bad thing that everybody needs to stop. I'm just saying, let's talk about what it does and the effects, and let's have honest conversations about what it is and who it affects and why it affects the people it affects, and what we as a society can do to chart a path for those who have gotten into that place where they don't know how to get themselves out of, that doesn't involve shame, ridicule, embarrassment, turning people into memes, and all of that. And honestly, a lot of our weekend memes that get shared around is of drunk folks and accidents happening to drunk folks. And we think it's funny. And I won't lie, to an extent, it can be a bit funny. But having said that, these are people obviously who have a problem with addiction and alcohol. And maybe instead of just laughing about it and turning them into the butt of our jokes, maybe we need to start thinking about ways we can help them and maybe in turn help ourselves. Severity of alcoholism varies from person to person. It varies based on age range, it varies. And there are subsets like a functional alcoholic, I was one, chronic alcoholics or binge drinking alcoholics, all of those subgroups, we'll talk about them later in other episodes. And I hope that understanding these different facets and faces of alcoholism will help us battle these society issues and chart a way forward on what to do, how to do it, and maybe help other people. On the other hand, sobriety, the journey I'm particularly on. So sobriety is defined as a state of not being under the influence of any substances that alter your mind, okay? So let's not get this twisted. Alcohol, as much as we might not like to admit it, alcohol alters our mind. It reduces inhibitions. We're going to talk about all this a little bit later. But alcohol reduces your inhibitions and eventually, after continued use, affects your brain chemistry. And so sobriety is when your brain is not under the influence of anything that can alter your mind. It's about living a life that's free of the fog of intoxication of any kind and allowing yourself to show up in your life fully, authentically, and truly. All that you are, your strengths, your weaknesses, everything that makes you you. That's the beauty of being you, being able to show up in your full glory, whatever that might look like. And while alcoholism is now considered an illness that needs treatment, that needs interventions, sobriety, like many things that define the human experience, is a deeply personal choice. And I want to reiterate this and say it because it's so important to recognize that sobriety is a choice you can make and I can make for me. It's not a choice anybody forces on you. It's not a choice you can talk someone into. They have to be ready. I have to be ready to get to a point and deliberately choosing to stay sober. So now that we have defined alcoholism, we've defined sobriety. What next? I think that it's super important to look around our cultures and where we have grown up and where we are growing up and where our children are growing up. And I think it's fair to say right now, again, come in the comments, correct me, tell me I'm wrong for saying this, or tell me factually I'm wrong. Alcohol is a part of a lot of our African societies and African cultures. It's a rite of passage for a lot of our happy moments, sad moments, watching football moments, and everything in between. And we've been burying our head in the sand for so long, we are not addressing the complications that come with this problem. And I think it's time for us to rise up, not just for ourselves, but also for the future generations, and say, enough is enough. Alcoholism has done enough damage, has ruined a lot of futures. And we can say right now that we as a society want to stand up and talk. And maybe from there come up with concrete steps to help us get to the next step, to help us guide not just the younger generations who are falling into it, but also the older generation or those of us in between who want to make the choice to be free of addiction, but don't know how, don't know where to begin. I'm hoping this channel is the beginning of those conversations. I'm going to wrap up here today. And I want to hope you learned something new today. And I hope you'll join me for further episodes as we delve further into this topic of alcoholism and addiction. I invite you to give me feedback. I invite you to give comments on what you think and on questions you might have, right? You might have questions, you might have curiosities. Tell them to me. Maybe you're somebody who has won this battle and you want to share your story. Reach out to me. I'd love to hear from you. I'm going to wrap this up right now and say thank you for joining me. Thank you for your time. I will ask for you to consider liking, subscribing, and hitting the notification bell so you can stay up to date with the upcoming episodes. It would mean the absolute world to me if you do that. And in the meantime, stay sober if you can. Stay blessed. And remember, one step at a time, we can do this together. Have a wonderful week. Bye.